Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me. My name is Kristen, and today I'd like to share with you my currently inked pens for May 2024. So I'm going to be testing out 4 new pens. I have the Hongdian C1 in dark green, the Sailor 1911 large in black luster, the Aurora Volterra, and my Sailor 1911 Realo in champagne or champagne green. With this collection, I will be using 6 inks from my bottled ink collection, 3 from the 2023 Diamine ink vent calendar, and 3 from the April 2024 ink flight samples. Let's take a closer look at these pens. All right, so first up, this is the Aurora Volterra. It has an extra fine nib, and I've got this one inked up with the ink that actually came with it, Aurora Sepia. I know that I used the same ink last month in April because it was part of an ink flight box and I wanted to try out that sample, but now I have a full bottle of that ink and I really wanted to try it out in my new fountain pen. This is the Sailor 1911 large, black luster. It's got a medium nib. It's probably really difficult to see the dimensions of this pen because it's so dark. And that's what I like about it. It's really dark. This pen is inked up with Herbin Terre de Feu. It's one of the new small bottles of ink that I recently purchased, and so I want to try it out in this beautiful fountain pen. This is my Pelikan M800 in brown black. It's got a broad cursive italic nib on here. It's inked up with Diamine Fireside Snug, one of the ink vent colors. This is the Platinum 3776 Century Chenonceau white. It's got a soft fine nib and it loves super duper wet inks. So I have inked this one up with Diamine Cinnabun, a super wet, feathery in some cases, ink that also has a really distinct scent. This tends to be my super wet or even scented inks fountain pen. They perform really well in this pen. This is the Hongdian C1. It has an extra fine hooded nib, and I've inked up this pen with Birmingham pen company Lichen, one of the newer inks in my bottled ink collection. This is the Sailor 1911 Realo Champagne. It has a medium nib, and I've inked up this fountain pen with Wearingeul Tom Sawyer. Tom Sawyer was an ink that didn't perform well in one of my pens from 30 Inks 30 Days, and I really wanted to give that ink another shot because it was so beautiful. This is a fountain pen that actually writes kind of broad. It's a medium nib, but it writes a little on the thicker side. So I am hoping that Tom Sawyer and this broader writing medium nib will get along well together. This is my Montegrappa Elmo in Marshmallow. It has an extra fine steel nib, and I've inked this one up with Octopus Fluids Dragon. It's one of the ink flight colors from April 2024. This is my Edison Premier in the Dragoness finish. It has a medium nib, and I've inked it up with Diamine Blizzard, one of the ink vent colors from 2023. This is my Pilot Vanishing Point in black matte. It has a fine nib, and I've inked it up with Aurora Turquoise. Hopefully that pop of summery color is going to bring some life and interest to this matte black pen. This is my Visconti Kaleido in Unicorn Galaxy. Oof. It has a fine cursive italic nib, and yes, that is the ink right there inside the section of the pen. So this is inked up with Pilot Iroshizuku Ajisai. This is my new Esterbrook JR in the Bellezza finish. It has an extra fine nib, and I've inked it up with Octopus Fluids Medusa. So Medusa is a very saturated purple ink, but it has a very strong green sheen. So I'm really interested in seeing how that ink is going to look coming from this pen. This is my Esterbrook SD in the lilac. It has an extra fine steel nib, and I've inked this one up with Tom's Studio Damson, one of the ink flight colors from last month. This is my Twisby Eco Smoke and Rose Gold, and it has a medium steel nib, and I've inked it up with Wearingeul Anubis. It's a nice gray ink with a lovely like rose gold coppery shimmer. I figured it'd be a wonderful match for this pen. So now I'm going to do some writing samples of all of these pens on various papers and notebooks in my collection. Let's start with Tomoe River paper. That is super saturated. This extra fine nib definitely has some feedback to it, and I enjoy the feedback on my Aurora nibs. It's really nice. Wow. Yeah, I like this. This is really smooth. Oh my goodness. This is a really nice combination. I love the feel of this nib on the paper. It is so smooth. It's like there's even less feedback on this nib than there is on my typical Sailor nibs. I really like it too. Wow. That's so nice. That is really nice. My goodness, this is definitely it's definitely thick. Okay. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be writing in cursive with this fountain pen. I just love how it looks and feels whenever I write in cursive. It's really huge right here. Oh, it smells so nice. Yeah. It smells really good. Yeah, this is definitely feathering. No, this makes me sad. Oh, that makes me so sad. The ink is feathering. That is very unfortunate. I was hoping that it would not feather because of my prior experience with Diamine Sweet Dreams in this same fountain pen. I used Diamine Sweet Dreams in this same fountain pen and there was no feathering coming from the 3776, even though both of those inks feathered during my swatching sessions last December. If it won't work in the Platinum 3776, I don't think I have a fountain pen that will work well with it. I mean, I could try it with a Kaweco Sport fountain pen and see if that will help matters. Those pens tend to spread out, spread thin the inks. So that will be my last resort for Diamine Cinnabun. And if I can't get it to work there, then it's just not going to be an ink for me. Wow. This is really thin. Oh my gosh. This is an extra fine nib. Oh my goodness. It's really thin. At the same time, this nib is super stiff. And so it gives me that security that I need for a nib that writes this thin. Oh, that's really good. Yeah, so this one definitely has much more feedback than the Sailor 1911 Black Luster. And I can't even say that one ink is drier than the other because urban inks tend to be pretty dry. And the same thing with these lighter inks like Tom Sawyer. They're pretty dry inks as well. You don't really get very much lubrication with these inks. And so I really believe that there is less feedback on that 1911 Black Luster fountain pen. I'll have to check out this nib under a loop. It feels like there is a little bit more feedback, more scratchiness going from right to left with this nib. And so I want to check this one out under the loop. I love this pairing. That's really nice. And I see sheen already with this ink as well. So yeah, that just shows that there is still a good deal of wetness with this nib. That looks really nice. It's such a deep dark color, but it's still saturated and I can still tell that it's like this dark teal with a red sheen. So yeah, I'm enjoying these ink colors so far. That is such a nice match. I really think that that is such a lovely match. And the shimmer is so gorgeous too. Yes. Ooh. Okay. There's a little bit of dry out. I suspect it was just the way that I filled up the pen. So I just flooded the feed for this writing sample. Hopefully there will be no issues in the future with this pen and ink combination. There's something in this nib. Man. Okay. This is gorgeous. It's not an exact match, but I really do love the look and feel of this Iroshizuku ink coming out of this pen. It looks like an almost black ink. It's a purplish black coming out of this pen, and I wonder how much sheen is actually going to appear. I mean, if it ends up being just purple, I'm okay with that too. It seems like there's a little bit of feathering with this Octopus Fluids Medusa. It makes me sad. Why? Why? Why are things feathering on Tomoe River paper? This is Tomoe River Tea, Tomoegawa paper. So I don't know what's going on this month with this paper. That's a nice pairing as well. Damson seems a bit more berry colored. It's much warmer. It has a little bit more red than the body of this pen, but I still love the look of that ink from this pen. There we go. Made it work. Oof. Okay, so these are the pen and ink pairings for May. Aurora Sepia, I feel like this is probably going to lighten up the more that I write with it. And there may have been a little bit of evaporation going on with this ink, but we'll see if it actually lightens up over time. Because I remember this ink being lighter. Then again, the Aurora fountain pens typically write wetter. So I don't know if it's going to be lighter than this or if it's actually going to be this consistently throughout the month. This Sailor 1911 large black luster is amazing. I love the smoothness of this nib, but it still feels like a Sailor fountain pen. It's super smooth. It still feels like a Sailor. Now, the ink color, it might take me a little while to get used to the color of this ink. We'll see what I think about it. I'm glad I have a small bottle of this ink rather than a larger Herbin bottle. The Pelikan M800 Brown Black is definitely a broader writing fountain pen, so I'm going to be writing in cursive with that one. I know that I will. Fireside Snug looks really good coming from this nib. I wonder how much shading I'm going to get from this nib once I start writing in cursive as well. Diamine Cinnabun was 100% a disappointment already. I'm really sad about that one. I wonder if it's going to feather in all of my other writing samples, but we'll see about that one. The Hongdian C1 dark green with an extra fine nib, that is a true extra fine. Oh my goodness, it is thinner and I think even stiffer than the Montegrappa Elmo Marshmallow extra fine nib. But yeah, that is really nice. I love the color of this ink, Lichen. I also love the color of Wearingeul Tom Sawyer. The Sailor 1911 Realo Champagne definitely has feedback in comparison to this black luster fountain pen. I'm going to take a look at that one because there was much more resistance, a little bit of scratchiness going from right to left with that nib. The Montegrappa Elmo Marshmallow is never a disappointment. It's always been a wonderful writing fountain pen, and so I am glad about that pairing. And the same thing with the Edison Premier Dragoness with the medium nib. Diamine Blizzard looks so good coming out of that pen. Look at that shimmer. And Aurora Turquoise coming out of the Pilot Vanishing Point is such a nice surprise. I love that black pen with a bright and lively color. Visconti Kaleido Unicorn Galaxy is such a smooth writer. It's such a smooth and juicy writing fountain pen. And so I am so happy to have something like this, like a really nice lubricated but fun looking ink like Ajisai coming from that pen. There was some lint or thread or some sort of fibrous something between the tines. And so once I pulled it out, I had no issues writing after that point. Octopus Fluids Medusa, it looks like there is no sheen. I was really expecting to see some sheen in this ink, and I was gonna roll with it with my green fountain pen, but it's purple right here. So I wonder if it takes a broader nib, because this is a wet writing fountain pen, but I see absolutely no sheen here, and I'm actually kind of pleasantly surprised, and I have no issues with putting this purple ink, it's like almost black, in at that fountain pen. So it's a really nice pairing. Tom's Studio Damson in the Esterbrook SD Lilac looks really good as well. So I think I'm going to enjoy like all of these extra fine nibs that I've got inked up. Wearingeul Anubis in the Twisby Eco Smoke Rose Gold. It looks really nice. All I can see is shimmer at this point, but I love the fact that there is this golden coppery shimmer on top of this gray ink. It looks like a really, really warm gray because of that shimmer. So I am very excited about this lineup for the month. I'm going to go ahead and do the writing samples on the additional papers and a couple notebooks, and I will be back to share my findings. Okay, I am back with the completed writing samples. This is Midori paper, Cosmo Air Light, Yamamoto Bank paper, Iroful paper, and Tomoe River paper. In general, the inks are pretty consistent across papers. There are a few inks that are a little different, specifically on Yamamoto Bank paper. But as far as the four on the outsides, Midori, Cosmo Air Light, Iroful, and Tomoe River, there are just very subtle differences. Starting from the top, Aurora Sepia is definitely a darker ink coming from the Aurora Volterra fountain pen. Let me bring you closer to just these two, Yamamoto Bank paper on the left and Iroful paper on the right. And you can definitely see a much warmer brown ink here on the bank paper than you can on the Iroful paper. It's less saturated and a little bit more gray on Iroful paper. And I can see the same thing with Herbin Terre de Feu. It is lighter, slightly more saturated here, and of course here as well. Diamine Fireside Snug is a little bit warmer, a little bit brighter, more saturated here on the bank paper. It's the same thing with Diamine Cinnabun, much more yellow here. It looks pretty consistent, maybe slightly greener a little bit warmer. Birmingham Pen Company Lichen is a little bit warmer on bank paper. Wearingeul is lighter, definitely lighter. Wearingeul Tom Sawyer looks a bit bluer here on Iroful paper. Octopus Fluids Dragon looks pretty consistent. There's definitely a sheen, much more sheen than I was expecting to see with this ink. Diamine Blizzard looks pretty good, pretty consistent across papers, I think. Same thing with the Aurora Turquoise. Kaleido Suzuku Ajisai actually looks a bit bolder here on Iroful paper than it does on the Yamamoto Bank paper. I see a softer violet purple coming through on the bank paper here. Octopus Fluids Medusa. There is sheen on both, but the sheen on the Yamamoto Bank paper actually has more of a, it's much more of a shiny, reflective sheen than it is on the Iroful paper. Tom's Studio Damson looks more of a berry color here. I see a little bit more red on the bank paper. And Wearingeul Anubis looks less saturated here on Iroful paper on the right. Which papers were my favorite? Actually, my favorite wasn't one of these pages. My favorite writing experience actually was in the Usari notebook. But for these right here, I'll say my least favorite was the Midori paper. And specifically, the Platinum 3776 Century was really scratchy, very dry writing. It was very unpleasant on Midori paper. And so that was, I guess, my worst experience there. My favorite experience might have been the Sailor 1911 Large Black Luster across papers. This was really nice. I love the smoothness of that nib on all of the papers that I tried today. I really do enjoy the feel of the Montegrappa Elmo Marshmallow with this extra fine nib. That was really nice. Diamine Blizzard is really good. The Edison Premier Dragoness fountain pen does so very well with Diamine Blizzard. It's nice and juicy. There's not very much feedback or friction when I use that fountain pen. I can still feel and tell that there is shimmer in the ink, but it still glides pretty smoothly across the paper, even with that shimmer. I love the bounce on the nib for the Visconti Kaleido Unicorn Galaxy. That is just a lovely, lovely nib. And it also feels a bit fragile. Like the softness, the bounce of that nib causes me to be super careful whenever I'm handling the pen and capping and uncapping that pen. But it writes so very well. Octopus Fluids Medusa, I was really expecting to see green sheen, but it is very subtle across papers. It doesn't matter which paper I use. It is basically a purple ink coming out of that extra fine nib. Even though the extra fine nib is writing pretty wet with this ink, the sheen is much more subtle on this ink than it is with Octopus Fluids Dragon, which is interesting because in my swatching, Octopus Fluids Dragon had less sheen than Medusa. It looked like a green ink on my swatch card. I really like the color of Wearingeul Anubis. I'm a little worried whenever I purchase a bottle of ink before getting a sample, but that was one ink that I just went ahead and grabbed because the color just intrigued me so much. I love this. I believe it might be like a warmer shade of gray, but then that shimmer on top of it just looks so good. If I go back up to Terre de Feu, it's an okay ink color. I think I'm more taken by the actual fountain pen than the ink color itself. So I'm gonna have to see what I think about this ink color. I'm okay with Diamine Fireside Snug. I could take it or leave it. I would prefer something that's a little less orange, a little more brown. But yeah, this is definitely an orange ink. It's a really nice orange ink, but I prefer like brown inks. Diamine Cinnabun is disappointing. I think I'm going to go ahead and clean out this fountain pen and not even use this ink at all, which is fine because I've got 13 pens inked up right now. I can reduce it to 12 and I'll be just as happy. Sometimes this ink feathered and other times it did not. So on Tomoe River paper, it definitely feathered. But if I come over here to Midori paper, for example, it actually looks fine. It looks really good on Midori paper. Lots of feathering on the Tomoe River paper on the right. The paper that I write on is Tomoe River paper, and I need it to be reliable on Tomoe River paper. Let me bring over the Sanzen Tomoe River paper. Okay, so on the Sanzen Tomoe River paper, Diamine Cinnabun is actually well behaved. Maybe I'll keep it inked up a little while longer. I really loved how Diamine Sweet Dreams felt in the Platinum fountain pen, this Platinum fountain pen, but that same lubrication is missing from Diamine Cinnabun. So I don't know how long I'm going to keep this one inked up. As far as the other inks go, Aurora Sepia looks really good. I'm not too fond of this ink color, Herbin Terre de Feu, but I am very fond of the feel of this Sailor 1911 Large Black Luster. that is a great nib on this pen. So I'm going to keep it inked up even though I'm not too fond of the color because I really do enjoy the writing experience. Diamine Fireside Snug looks fine. I'm very picky when it comes to orange ink, I think, but I really do enjoy the writing experience of the Pelikan M800 with this broad cursive italic nib. Diamine Cinnabun is looking good. Birmingham Pen Company Lichen looks pretty good here as well. Sometimes I really like this Hongdian C1 extra fine nib, and other times it feels a bit underwhelming. And I've realized that because of this super small, super fine hooded nib, it is a little difficult to make sure that I'm hitting that sweet spot with that nib. I'll have to spend a little bit more time with this fountain pen. Wearingeul Tom Sawyer in the Sailor 1911 Realo Champagne. This is a really nice ink color. I really do like this ink color, but I'm starting to feel some misalignment with the tines. I want to take a look at this nib under the loupe to see if I can realign those tines and eliminate the scratchiness that I'm feeling right now. Montegrappa Elmo Marshmallow is just lovely with this ink color. I like the contrast of this light colored fountain pen with this deep dark teal color and red sheen. Diamine Blizzard is amazing in that Edison premiere. The Pilot Vanishing Point performing as always. The Visconti Kaleido is really, really nice. This Esterbrook JR Bellezza is really nice. I really like the juicy nib on this thing. And Octopus Fluids Medusa just looks so good. Tom Studio Damson looks good as well. Wearingeul Anubis, this is performing reliably as well. It's coming out of a Twisby Eco with a medium nib, so I'm expecting that to be a really nice writer for the month. Here is the cream paper for the month. This is the Oasis notebook with cream paper. Aurora Sepia, Herbin, Terre de Feu. This reminds me of Terre Rose, what is it? Terre Guitar Opera Rose. I'm undecided about how I feel about this ink. It's pinker than Opera Rose, which makes me happy. The Sailor 1911 Large Black Luster looks really good. Pelikan M800 was really nice, really fun with this taller line height. Cinnabun actually looks good. There is no feathering here. The Hongdian C1 Dark Green, it looks good as well. Wearingeul Tom Sawyer looks good. All of these inks look really good on this cream paper. I just want to show you, this was my favorite writing experience. On the 8mm line height Usari notebook paper, it was so slick, so smooth. Every single fountain pen on here was just really pleasant to write with. Okay, every single one but one. Every single pen except one, the Platinum 3776 Century. There is a little bit of feathering here, but it's very minimal. It just looks like there are rough edges to my letters. But everything else was just so very pleasant, so very smooth. I love the way these inks look on this paper, and I love the way that the nibs feel on this paper. As this looks like an autumn color palette right here. But yeah, they're pretty consistent. Pretty consistent here as well. That Diamine Blizzard is so very nice. Because of my experiences with the April 30 Inks 30 Days challenge, I'm probably going to be less accommodating to pen and ink pairings that don't make me happy at all. So I'm probably still going to unink this fountain pen because I just don't enjoy the writing experience here. So whether or not it feathers, I still don't like the writing experience with that ink in this pen. Everything else is really, really nice. I love the feel of this nib. I love the look of this ink. I love the look and feel here. This is really, really good. This is good too, but it doesn't stand out as much as some of these others. This is a really nice one. Damson is good. Medusa is really good. So these are the ones that like are really making me happy right now. The others are fine. The others are okay. There might be one or two things that make me less than pleased. So for this one, I'm not too fond of the color. Not too fond of the color. I want to empty this one. The ink color is all right, but the writing experience is a bit underwhelming. The ink in this one is really good, but I want to take a look at that nib under the loupe. This one is good, but it's not my favorite ink color to use. And this one is actually pretty good as well. I just really like this purple more than that one. And so that's the only reason why, you know, maybe it'll be halfway up there. But these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I guess my top 6 so far. We'll see if they remain that way throughout the month. That is my currently inked for the month of May 2024. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you all in the next one. Have a great day. Bye-bye.